Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Michaela, and this is my first video on YouTube. I'm going to try to keep this sane, keep it moving. If I'm talking too fast, I'm sorry. Hopefully I will get better at this. But today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in January. I read mostly from my library, and I read a lot of audiobooks, so I don't have most of these physically, but I will try to pop up pictures if I can figure it out. So the first book that I read in January was 𝚲𝚃 by 𝚲𝚃 𝚲𝚃. I know I've seen mostly negative reviews for this one, and I actually really liked this. I ended up giving this 5 stars. I feel like the biggest complaint I've seen from people is that it didn't have enough, horror elements, or also that 𝚲𝚃 𝚲𝚃 is mostly a YA author, and that this tends to read on the YA side, like how the characters speak to each other doesn't come off like how their ages are depicted in the book. Despite all that, I still really liked it. I haven't read anything set in an amusement park like this, so I thought that was really cool. Just to give a brief synopsis, if you haven't already heard what this is about, it follows the story of a bunch of contestants who are going to compete in this sort of hide-and-seek game set in an amusement park, and they're supposed to be whoever hides the longest gets a prize at the end, like a monetary prize. And a bunch of these characters, we learn like all their different motivations of why they want to win or what they're here for, and I just thought that was super interesting. I really liked the writing too. There was a couple of quotes I really liked from this. So I ended up giving this 5 stars. I don't think I've ever read anything by 𝚲𝚃 𝚲𝚃 before. I don't think I've read any of her YA. I do actually have this book from 𝚲𝚃 𝚲𝚃 called 𝚲𝚃. I love Buffy. Huge Buffy fan. So that's why I got this. I still haven't read it though. It's been on my shelf for years, and I feel more motivated now after reading 𝚲𝚃, so hopefully I can get to that sometime this year. The next book I read in January was Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrane. I loved this book so much. I also gave this a 4 star. I thought it was a 5. So this follows the story of, it's kind of a girl meets guy's sister story. So it's 2 girls who, they had like a one romantic day a year ago, and then something happened, and then their paths kind of went in opposite directions. And our main character kind of has this, the marriage of convenience trope happen, and she finds out that that guy's sister is the girl that she had a fling with like a year ago for the one day. And I just thought this was the cutest story. I think I gave it 4 stars because I really didn't like the our main character is a comic book writer. She like writes for the fictional version of like webtoons in this world, and so the author included sort of like these fan fiction sections that the main character was writing about that one day, like her love story with the girl that she met a year ago. And I really didn't like those like sort of fan fiction sections. That's how it read to me, was like fan fiction. And it just felt really unnecessary because it wasn't real. It wasn't like pertinent to the story. I just wanted to read about what was really going on, like what they were going through in the present. So I didn't like that, so that's why I gave it a 4 star. But overall, I really loved it. It made me cry a lot at the end. Yeah, I really liked this one a lot. The next book I read in January was Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and I read this on audio really quickly. So I thought it was really readable. It kept my interest. I did think that it was very dense, and it took a little time to get into because you're kind of like learning about this whole new world. Like, well, it's set in our world. It's set at Yale University, but there's all these secret societies and everything that goes with that. And I just felt like it's kind of dense and heavy, but at the same time, I was really interested in it and interested in the characters and where it was going. And I also thought, like, despite it being kind of slow to start, it really paid off towards the end. There's some really good twists in this. And the ending, oh my gosh, the ending was so good. I immediately pre-ordered 𝚆𝙀𝚃, and I also read that in January, so I will get to that in a minute. But yes, I really liked Ninth House, and I definitely want to buy that one and have a physical copy of it. The next book I read in January was Insomnia by 𝚆𝙃 𝚃𝚃. This is my first 𝚆𝙃 𝚃𝚃 book. I've heard good things about 𝚆𝙃 𝚃𝚃, but I just haven't picked anything up until now. So Insomnia, also, I read a lot of books in January, so I'm kind of going off memory, and if I'm missing like major plot pieces as I'm explaining these, I'm sorry. It's already like a lot of these are starting to evaporate from my memory. But Insomnia follows the story of a woman who is nearing her 40th birthday, and she is very scared about turning 40 because her mother had mental health issues, and she almost like prophesized when her daughter would turn 40, like the same thing would happen to her. And we're kind of learning about like what happened to this woman when she was a kid with her mom, and like what she's so afraid of happening to her, like repeating itself. I gave this book 3 stars. I really liked it. I think it's that sort of like genre of thriller that doesn't typically work for everyone. I don't want to spoil it, but there is like a speculative element to this, and I know not everybody likes that, like sort of more supernatural elements within their thrillers, but I really liked it. I thought that was really interesting. I'm trying to remember why I gave it 3 stars. I think it was like there were some elements let me just go to my Goodreads review so I can accurately talk about this. So with that speculative element, I felt like it was really interesting, but it also was just kind of like thrown in the end. It felt like it wasn't really built up, and I don't know how she would have done that, because I don't know how she would have built it up, but it just felt like kind of, instead of being able to, sometimes when you get to a really good twist and you're like, oh, you can see all those dots connecting, and it's like your mind is blown by that, I felt like this was kind of just like plopped in, and it made sense once it was explained, but it just wasn't like totally executed how I would have liked, I guess. There was also some other elements that kind of annoyed me, like nothing to do with plot, but just like the characters. Like I thought it was really annoying, like how the main character's husband wanted to go back to work because he's a stay-at-home dad in the book, and she was very like apprehensive about it and didn't want him to go back to work and didn't want their kid to have to be in daycare, which I just thought was really silly, because if the tables were turned and that was like the woman being like a stay-at-home mom, I feel like we'd all be reading that and being so annoyed that the husband like is like saying, you can't go to work, you're not allowed to, you have to stay home. Like, so it's just really frustrating. Like I feel like there's no reason he shouldn't have been able to do that. And just like random other things, like I thought the main character's family was really annoying, because typical thriller, nobody believes her and just all the characters are bad. So I don't know, just her family annoyed me. But yeah, so I gave that a 3 star. I still really liked it, and I still want to pick up more from 𝚆𝙃 𝚃𝚃. Okay, the next book I read in January was We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix. This was really interesting. In 2022, I like binged most of Grady Hendrix's backlist, and I really fell in love with his books. I haven't given them all 5 stars, and I actually just recently read the newest How to Sell a Haunted House, and I really didn't love that either, so hopefully I can do like a February wrap up and talk about that. But for We Sold Our Souls, this follows the story of a woman who was in a band, and like kind of a metal like 80s band. I don't know. Like it was a metal band, and right before they were supposed to have their big break, the main lead singer kind of signs a contract that leaves them all out of it. So basically he takes the band and he rises to fame, and the rest of the band is just broken up and they go their own ways, and no one else makes it. Like, he's the only one who gets famous and is able to create music for a living. And it kind of follows the story of the woman who was in that band reconnecting with her old bandmates and trying to bring that lead guy down. And there's a lot of supernatural elements to this, but I thought it was really interesting. I only gave it a 3-star, but it was really interesting, kind of the concept of, I don't want to spoil anything, but it's called We Sold Our Souls. So you kind of get an idea of what that is. Like, you know, maybe there were some deals that went on with however to get famous, kind of like in Jennifer's Body. It sort of reminds me of that. Like, something that really I thought was interesting with this one was, imagine how many times we sign our names, and imagine like and we just do it, like, you know, when you're signing up for a new website or a newsletter or whatever it is, like you just sign your name and you don't read the fine print and the terms and conditions. And just imagine like if all those times like you were actually selling your soul, and that's why the world just feels so empty and everybody feels empty inside, like because they don't have their souls anymore. I just thought that was such an interesting concept. I think Grady Hendrix is really successful at that, like creating different ideas I haven't read about before. So I really liked that one. The next book I read in January was a middle grade. It was called The Hat Makers by 𝚲𝙾𝙽𝚃, and I gave this a 4-star. I thought this was so cute. I really got into reading middle grades last year. I was reading a lot of really heavy thrillers and horror, and it was like really getting to me mentally. So I found middle grades and thought it was like so wholesome and really just helped to be a palate cleanser to all those heavier reads. The Hat Makers follows our main character Cordelia, who comes from a long line of hat makers. And in this world, there's like these different factions of families who make different magical sort of clothing items. So there's hat makers, boot makers, watch makers, and the main character, right in the beginning, her father went out to sea to try to find new ingredients to make hats, because they put like these magical ingredients in their hats that puts power into them pretty much. And on this expedition to get more ingredients, he's like lost to sea. So right away, the main character's dad is like out of the picture, but she believes like he's still out there somewhere. So it's kind of the story of, and then there's the king in this world, and the king is acting super weird. They're bringing in doctors and specialists to try to figure out like what is wrong with him, because he's just being like crazy and like just strange. Like he's not being like himself, and he's not like leading the kingdom or whatever. So we're trying to figure out, the main character is trying to figure out like what's going on with the king, where's her dad. There's a lot of mystery here and a lot of like coming of age. Like she wants to build her own hat, but she hasn't been taught, and she's not allowed to build her own hat by herself yet. And there's some really cute friends in here that she meets, and yeah, I just really liked this. I thought it was super cute. I really liked the writing. There were some quotes in there that I wrote down that I really liked, and yeah, definitely thought that was a good one. The next book I read in January was called Rules for Being a Girl by Candace Bushnell. This is a YA, kind of contemporary. This was a really short, super quick read, and I really liked it. This follows the story of our main character being groomed by her teacher in high school, and her dealing with that and kind of coming to terms with like the difficulties of existing in this world as a girl and the double standards that exist for example, like dress code is kind of something that happened, like a theme in this book. The double standards for how girls have to dress and then how boys have to dress. I gave this, what did I rate? I rated this 5 stars. I really liked this. There's a quote. Okay, it's in chapter 10. It's basically like the namesake, the title, Rules for Being a Girl. Our main character is on the newspaper. She works for the school newspaper. And she writes this article after her teacher tries to, you know, like, is inappropriate with her. And I don't want to spoil it, but okay, getting back to what I'm saying. She writes this article after that happens, and after her teacher starts treating her differently in class. She writes this article for her newspaper called Rules for Being a Girl. And it was so good. Okay, so I listened to this on audio. And the audio narrator did such a good job at that part, reading that. I was blown away. I rewound it and listened to it like 3 times. It was just, I related to it so much. And just the way that she narrates it and like her pacing as she's speaking it, it's so, so good. And yeah, I really liked this. The thing I noted in my Goodreads review for that was, I don't know if like everybody would love this book. I feel like as far as like feminist contemporaries go, it's not very nuanced. It's very like in your face. Like, okay, so an example I have for this is like My Dark Vanessa. You might be able to like compare and contrast these because it's a similar story where a younger girl is like being groomed by her older teacher. And that story is so nuanced, and it's a really, really difficult read. And this, I felt like, isn't difficult. It's super quick. It kind of glosses over like any really difficult like content that, for example, My Dark Vanessa didn't shy away from. Instead of sort of building the themes into the story, like the author kind of just like tells us like, but at the same time, I really liked it. I thought it was very, for a YA, like to get these conversations and themes like into a younger audience hands, like I thought that was really successful and well done. Okay, the next book I read in January was Breathless by Amy McCulloch. This one I gave 3 stars. I tend to okay, so theoretically this was the perfect book for me. I love snowy, isolated thrillers, like anything set in, it doesn't even have to be a thriller, anything set in like winter, snowy landscapes. I live for that. So I was really excited to start this. I also love survival stories. Like, basically what this book is our main character is writing for a newspaper, and she is trying to get an interview with this famous climber. So she's going to he's on this mission to climb all these mountains clean free, or whatever it calls it, like without oxygen, without ropes. And he promised to give her an interview with him if she summits this latest mountain that he's doing. But when she gets there, people start, disappearing. There's a couple murders, and she's trying to figure out what the heck is going on. I gave this 3 stars. I liked it. Thought that the ending was like very predictable. Like, the person who was doing it seemed super obvious to me from the start. But for what it was, I liked it because I love survival stories, and I also really liked super random note. But sometimes like that's like a make it or break it, add a star, subtract a star for me, is if there's like a random quote or a random character that I really liked. So what I'm trying to say is something I really liked about this book was the character Eileen, I think her name was. And she's not like central to the plot or anything. She's just one of the characters doing this summit. She's an influencer, like Instagram or something like that. And people judge her because she's an influencer and she likes to take pictures of herself and she cares about like what she looks like and has like she's putting on lipstick as she's doing this summit, you know, which seems like, why does she need to wear lipstick? Like, that's what the men are thinking it, like, why does she need to put on lipstick? We're climbing a mountain. And something I really liked that the author put in there was her not feeling pressure to play down her femininity just to fit into a typically male space. And I really like that because I've definitely felt that before, like working jobs where it's all men and feeling like, you know, I have to dress a certain way or I can't talk about certain things. Like, basically what she said, like playing down your femininity to fit into that space, and that character not feeling pressure to do so. So I really like that, like her still feeling like, oh, I like this and this makes me happy, so I'm going to put this on, and it doesn't matter what you think. Like, I'm not going to change myself to fit into, you know, this space that you think I shouldn't be allowed in. And then also she talked about how she explained like the nuances of being a girl climbing a mountain and the unwanted advances that can come from like the male climbers towards the females. And there was a quote I did write down. She said, "The manuals were written by men for men." And I just thought that was really interesting, like, because you think about that, like women climbers being thousands of feet up and how you might feel unsafe, you know, surrounded by men, and how it's typically a male-dominated space. So I thought this book was good overall, but I gave it a 3. Next book I read was The Guest List. This is by Lucy Foley. I gave this a 5-star. I know I'm super late to the train on this. Everyone has already read The Guest List. This is my first Lucy Foley. I really liked it. I would say for the first half, I was not in it. It just felt really heavy, and sometimes I get that way with thrillers where the themes are really dark and I don't want to pick it up because, like, I'm interested. I pick it up because I want to know what's going to happen, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm being bogged down because they're so heavy and dark. And that's kind of how I felt with the first half of The Guest List. All the male characters in this book are garbage. They made me feel so gross and icky, and a couple of them that we got perspectives from, I just hated reading, like, having to live in their minds. Like, ugh. It was just yuck, yuck, yuck. But I thought, like, the ending was really good. There was some really good twists that I didn't see coming, and I was genuinely shocked towards the end. There's also, towards the end, there's this, like, string of chapters that are super short, and it's basically every character being like, something happens, and then the lights went out. And then the next character, something would happen, and then the lights went out. It's like all their perspectives right before the lights go out. Because basically right when we pick up in this book, I think there's a body found or something. There's some, like, crazy moment in the very beginning. I'm sorry, I'm already forgetting everything. But there's some crazy moment that happens right in the beginning. So it's like us, you know, trying to work our way back to, like, next chapter we go back a day and we're trying to work our way to that prologue chapter. So I thought that was really cool how she wrote those parts whenever it was like, and then the lights went out. So that one was really good. I gave that a 5-star. And I have right now over in the other corner of this room, The Hunting Party and The Paris Apartment from Lucy Foley. So I really hope I can get to those this month in February. The next book I read this month, or in January, was Secluded Cabin Sleeps 6 by Lisa Unger. Trying to see how many I have left because I'm getting so tired of talking. Okay. Secluded Cabin Sleeps 6 by Lisa Unger. 1 star. 1 star. The first 1 star of 2023. I hated this book. Okay. I was looking for the same vibes of, like, the Breathless book that I just spoke about. Like the isolated, chilling, like, we're climbing a mountain and somebody's hunting us. I was expecting that with this, you know. And also, I tend to go into books really blind. Like, I try not to read synopsises before I start them. before I start the book. And so I didn't really read anything of what this was about. I've never read from this author before, but I thought the name Secluded Cabin Sleep 6 was like really interesting. I was like, oh yes. But I really didn't like this. This wasn't for me. I wish I'd looked up trigger warnings before I read this. And what I mean by that is there's like a lot of like assault, not on well, not really on page, but it's like a major theme throughout the book. And I didn't like it. I just hated the male characters and the female characters. And that's the thing, like, I felt like the author was really trying to like absolve the, I don't know what she was trying to do with this book, honestly. I mean, maybe I just totally missed the point, but I felt like, I'm not going to spoil anything, but I'm just giving a broad overview where I'm saying the female characters kind of stand by male characters that are garbage, trash, put them outside with the dump and the, you know, like they're garbage. And the female characters are kind of like standing by them, and I just hated the ending. I hated the ending because, and how the author kind of describes it is like, oh, you know, they were young. They were young. They didn't know. No, because they're adults in this book. Like, something happened a long time ago that they're kind of like living with, and they pushed under the rug and went on with their lives, but they're adults in this book, and things are still happening, and they're still making excuses, and I just really hated it. It wasn't for me. 1 star. Okay, next book I read in January was The Cabin at the End of the World by 𝚆𝙸𝚃𝙷. I gave this 4 stars. That being said, I don't know if I will read any more from 𝚆𝙸𝚃. Last year I read The Pallbearers Club, which I gave 2 stars. It was a really great concept, but no, man, his writing is not for me. Not for me. So for The Cabin at the End of the World, super interesting concept. Execution-wise, okay, also, this book had it, you know, like, for me, I don't mind. Like I said, I love those like isolated thrillers, right? So basically this whole book is set in this one little area. Like it's set in this cabin in the woods. We never really leave the cabin. Like the whole book is pretty much set there. And that might be boring for some people, but typically I really like that. You know, I think it forces the author to really have a good plot and good characters because you can't rely on the setting. So I loved that aspect of it. What I didn't love was some of 𝚆𝙸𝚃's writing, honestly. Not his writing, but there were some quotes I really liked, but what I didn't like was I felt like sometimes he would just be super long-winded. That's what I'm trying to get at. It was so long-winded, like things that he didn't need to like go into so much detail. I felt about the Pallbearers Club as well, like feeling like, why are you going on about this for so long? Like, I don't care about this. This is barely relevant to the story. So I gave it a 4 star, but I'm kind of, you know, talking about it out loud, I'm gonna go to 3 because, yeah, it was really interesting, and I want to see the movie that I think comes out in February. I probably won't read any more from 𝚆𝙸𝚃. I wanted to read Head Full of Ghosts, I think it's called, and maybe if I'm like have nothing else to read, which when would that ever happen? But we'll see. Okay, finally, next book that I also have physically was 𝚆𝙀𝚃. 𝚆𝙀𝚃, I gave 3 stars out of 5. I did annotate it a lot. I was so excited for this. Like I said, as soon as I finished 9th House, I immediately pre-ordered 𝚆𝙀𝚃, and it was delivered to me on release day, so I immediately started this, and it took me about 2 weeks to read. I read a lot, like blended reads, like audio and physical, so a lot of times I'll get the audiobook and then I'll also get the physical book from the library so I can read it and listen at the same time. I don't often read only physically, and I'm a very slow physical reader, so that could be why too, like this took me so long to read, but I just felt like, oh my god, took me forever, and that maybe impacted my rating a bit. But okay, I'm not going to give any spoilers for 9th House because obviously this is a sequel, so there's like a limited amount of what I can say, but I just felt like the way 𝚆𝙀𝚃 ended us in 9th House, what she set up for the sequel, like really didn't happen. what I was so excited about was basically like 50 pages of this. And this is a long book. And also, so Ninth House, like I said earlier, is very dense. I felt like there's a lot of setup and world building. And also, 𝚆𝙃𝚃 had the same like thing. I don't want to call it a problem because like in a first book, like you need that. You need the world building and setup and everything. But for the sequel, I felt like we're also getting like a ton of exposition, and it like our two main characters they're researching because of what they have to do in this book. And it just felt like, you know, it was going on so long, and I wanted us to like get to the action. And once we finally did get to the action, it was like so short. It was like blew past it. And I was like, that's what I wanted you to focus on. That's what I was so excited for. That's why I pre-ordered this. Also, I felt like a lot of things happened way too easily. So when our characters had conflicts that they had to overcome, like the whole point of this pretty much was resolved, felt like so easily. Like we set it up for hundreds of pages, and then we got to it. Like once we had to actually go do the thing, it was like boom, like accomplished, like next, you know, like I don't know. I was disappointed. It wasn't everything I wanted it to be. Yeah, 3 stars. I still liked it. I still like I said, I annotated a lot. There's a lot of quotes I really liked. But overall, it wasn't what I was expecting or like what I wanted it to be. So yeah, I'm trying to hurry because I feel like I've been talking forever. Next book I read was Bunny by Mona Awad. Oh, okay, I've been wanting to read this for so long and loved it. 5 stars. Already, I keep like a list on my Goodreads of the best books of the year. And this is the first one I'm adding to my best of 2023 list. So, like, something I love in books is like when they're super weird and it feels like everything is one big metaphor. Like, you're constantly questioning if what's going on with the characters is actually in reality what's going on, or if this is like a metaphor and what is the author trying to say with this. And I feel like it gives you so much to think about. It's like that type of book that you immediately want to reread because you feel like there's so much more that you missed. And I really, really loved this. Oh, the writing was so good. I immediately, after finishing Bunny, I ordered All's Well by Mona Awad, and I really want to read that. I have like kind of an idea, maybe like a video I can make for that book. But yeah, I really loved it. The writing was really, really good. So beautiful, so atmospheric. Like, I don't even know how she did it, but like certain word choices she would use like to describe things, I was just like constantly surprised. Like, wow, that was perfect. Definitely want to reread in the future. Definitely want to like highlight, annotate it, and experience it again because there's so much going on there. It's crazy. But I love those. I love those like crazy weird books. Okay, so 5 stars. Next book I read was a nonfiction called Bad Vibes Only by Nora McInerney. I hope I'm saying that right. This was a super quick read. I listened to it on audio. Super quick nonfiction. It's like a sort of memoir book of essays. Basically, it's kind of combating that sort of toxic positivity that sometimes we have in our culture where, you know, good vibes only, like, we don't talk about the bad things, good vibes, blah, 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 blah. So I thought this book was really refreshing. I thought it was really funny. I thought it was really cute, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, I'm tired of talking. I thought this was really good. I don't have much to say. I really enjoyed my time reading it. It was good. Okay, next book I read, let's see, how many do we have left? We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 5 books left. Let's get through this. Next book I read, The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. Guys, I gave this a 3 stars. 3 stars. Okay. I know Riley Sager is kind of controversial. Like, you love him or you hate him. Typically, I don't like him. I've read Lock Every Door. I gave that 2 stars. Did not like it. I know that's like, I feel like that's his most popular book, and I don't understand why. I really didn't like that one. And then I read last year Home Before Dark, and I think I also gave that 3 stars. And then, so this is my next Riley Sager I picked up. House Across the Lake. 3 stars. It was good. That's what I feel like about his books, is I'm always just like, oh, that was good. Like, I don't know. It wasn't, either I dislike it or I'm just like, that was okay. And that's kind of how I felt about this one. Not much else to say. Moving on. Okay, next book I read was, and this one I had to, The Honeys by Ryan LaSala. What did I rate this? Okay, I was torn on this. For the first third of the book, I was like, holy moly, 5-star, new all-time fave. This is so good. And the writing, okay, I started annotating this. This is about as far as I got. So from here, where I was like 5-star, new all-time fave. And then it kind of gets a little crazy. Okay, it gets a little crazy. I liked it, but I just felt like where it went was like off the rails. Like, what is happening anymore? And there's a lot of nature horror in this, like weird bug stuff. It was kind of gross at times. And that wasn't what I thought was weird. Like, I like that, you know, I love nature horror, or, you know, the stuff with insects. Like, I thought that was cool. But what got weird with me was like, or what I thought was weird was like sort of the conspiracy society cult stuff that kind of like came out towards the end. And yeah, I don't know, guys. I really liked this. I loved the writing. The writing was so good. Like, I definitely want to read more from this author in the future. Also, I just want to talk about like this cover. Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. And like, not just the cover, but like the inside, this paper is like, not only, it looks like honeycomb, but it's honeycomb texture. It's so cool. And then, I'm sorry, I should be talking about the book and not the aesthetics of the book, but different parts throughout the book. And every time there's a part, it's like, looks like this, you know, so we're on part 3, and then there's flowers. And then as you go on, like parts later on in the book, there's like, gets more and more flowers. Also, the chapter headings are like that. I noticed that eventually. I was like, oh my god. Like, if you can tell how it says chapter 10, and it's like, oh, squiggly, like the front cover. It's like, as you, the first chapter, it looks totally normal. It's just like chapter 1, and it's regular bold print. But as you go, and as you, like, our character starts to, like, delve into this world, and, like, weird things start happening, the letters start to get, like, more and more wiggly and stuff, which I just thought was like, wow. The publisher went all out for this. Like, they knew they had a good book on their hand, and they're like, we're gonna invest in this thing. So, yeah, I really loved this. Like I said, I was torn 4 or 5, like between a 4 and a 5-star, because it was beautifully written. But I thought this was good, and I would recommend it if you like nature horror. It also reminded me a little bit of Bunny. Like, I thought that was weird because I read Bunny and then almost immediately read this, and they kind of reminded me of each other. But yeah, really good. Liked that one. Next book I read was, This Is Not the Jess Show by Anna Carey. So this is a YA book, and it's kind of like the YA version of The Truman Show, the movie with Jim Carrey, where, if you've seen it, I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. This is kind of like what I felt about The Honeys a little bit, where I really loved it to start, and then kind of where it went, it just went like a little bit off the rails for me. And that's kind of how I felt about This Is Not the Jess Show. The first part was so good, you guys. Like, I was listening to this on audio, and I was just like, oh, I was so entertained. Like, that was the thing. It was just so entertaining. Like, the characters slowly, like, figure out, like, what? That's weird. Like, so there's one point, this book is set in, like, the 90s, I believe. And there's one point where she's walking to school with her friend, or she's with her friend, and out of her friend's bag falls an iPhone. And our main character obviously doesn't know what it is because it's the 90s. But she's like describing it, and she's describing like the half-bitten apple on the back of the iPhone. And and her like slowly coming to terms with like, what? That's weird. What is that? And everybody's like being weird when she's trying to talk about it and ask them like, what is that, or what's going on. And there's like another part, I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, it's super entertaining. The first half is so good and so fast paced, and you're like, it's just so creepy because you're imagining like, oh my god, like what would I do if that, like, if weird stuff like that started happening. And then I was like questioning like, what is my reality, you know? But yeah, towards the middle, towards the end, I just thought like kind of went off the rails for me, and I was no longer like all about it. And I think there is a sequel. I'm not gonna pick it up. I thought like this was enough for me. I only think it needed to be a standalone anyways, but yeah, I thought this was good. I gave that a 3-star. Okay, we're almost at the end. The last 2 books I read in January was Delilah Green Doesn't Care and Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail by Ashley Herring Blake. Okay, so I gave these both a 4 out of 5 star, and I really liked them. I really liked them both, but as I was writing my review on Goodreads for Delilah Green Doesn't Care, I kind of started to think about it a little bit more and maybe be like, these are kind of more 3 stars than 4 stars. They are quick reads. Well, you know, are they quick reads? I don't know. I feel like they're kind of long for like contemporary romances. And here's the thing too, I'm not a big romance reader. I feel like I read a lot of thrillers, mysteries, and last year I tried to challenge myself to read outside of my comfort zone a little bit and pick up things that I don't normally pick up. So that's when I started reading middle grades, and I tried to get into romance. And so I'm very new to the genre, and it's not something that I typically enjoy reading. But I do love sapphic romances. Anytime there is a sapphic romance in my book, I am here for it, and that is like a buzzword for me. If I hear that is in a book, I want to read it. I really liked these 2, but they kind of felt like, you know, breezy, bubbly, like I'm gonna forget about it and right now. I read them and I'm already forgetting, you know, what I thought about them. They were good, not great. You know, the second book I read this year, Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrane, I liked that. I thought that was better than either of these 2. And that was the thing that was the difference for me, was Kiss Her Once for Me, I felt so connected to the characters. I felt like the author did a really, really good job at describing her characters and building like a connection between them. So me as a reader, like I felt like I was in it with them. Like I felt like I was in it, you know, like when they broke up, I was hurt, you know, I was broke up with them. But with these 2, Delilah Green and Astrid Parker, it just felt a little bit more surface level for me. Like, I don't know, for whatever reason, I didn't have the same connection to them as I did with Kiss Her Once for Me. So I would recommend them, you know, if you are a romance reader and that makes you happy, then, and you like sapphic romances, you might really enjoy these. Although I feel like everybody's already read them and I'm late to the party on these 2. So if you haven't picked them up, you know, give them a go. That is it. That is all of the books I read in January. It was a good month. So far, February has not been a good month. It's February 6th, or no, today's February 7th, and I've only read 2 books. So I'm hoping to kind of like, you know, get that up a little bit more. It's just been kind of a busy month and feeling a bit in a reading slump a bit. But yeah, so again, welcome to my channel. I hope I didn't talk too much for you. Hopefully I can figure out how to edit, and I can edit this down a little bit, and it will just be like a short, sweet, cute little package. I don't know how to say bye, but you know what? I'm not gonna say bye because I'll see you soon for my next video.